Good afternoon to everyone, and uh, can you hear me? Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir. Yes, sir. We can hear
All
you,
right.
sir.
I think this is the first lecture we are
Yes,
having.
sir. Can you give me a few seconds to introduce you, sir?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, thank you, sir. Good
Okay.
afternoon, everyone. I will
Good
introduce the
afternoon.
resource person for the today lecture. So, Mr. Deepal Bhattadwarachi is resource person for this economic subject, and he is one of the expert in the field of economics. He has contributed for so many sessions at our university. Today also, he is contributing for us. You will get to know many things related to the economic from him. Over to you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Nandini. And while welcoming you to the program and being the first lecture, I would first explain why this subject is important, irrespective of whether it's a management program or whether it is your own individual decision making or decision making at the organizational level, right? First, I would explain to you why the subject economics is very important for everyone, right? Now, here, I just give you a simple example in the sense uh, what you have observed over the last 2 years, right? Now, have seen that the average price level in the economy has risen tremendously over the last 2 years. Though it has slowed down, you all know that price level has gone up, right? And we refer to that in economics, we refer to that as inflation. So higher inflation has been one of the problems we have encountered specifically during the last 2 years. Now it has slowed down still. We talk about these higher average price levels, right? And then we talk about the exchange rate, depreciation of the domestic currency, right? And we look at and express our concerns over slowing down of the economy, lower economic growth rate, right? And I think you are into the supply chain management. And after the COVID, all of you have faced a problem of maintaining supply chains, right? So, like this is all about economics, right? So whatever happens in the macroeconomic environment, that has a tremendous impact on our lives as individuals, as firms and organizations, right? So therefore, uh, for decision making at whatever the level, maybe at managerial level, maybe individually, right? As consumers, as students, as professionals, right? The knowledge of this subject is very important. And gaining knowledge in this would help you in making effective decisions, right? Of course, when you go through the subject, you may see that as a lot of theories, concepts, graphs, but still, finally, this can be applied in our day-to-day decision making. So, broader, uh, broader knowledge in this is very important for us to make effective decisions, right? So let's start. Let's like look at the initial concepts and why it is important for us to learn this subject, right? Now, see, why we learn economics? That is, it's a to learn a way of thinking, to learn a way of thinking, right? Now here, of course, the you can see the concept opportunity cost. Now, what is meant by opportunity cost is, right? Now, today you have this lecture from 2 to 5, right? If you do not do this lecture, if you do not do this lecture, what would you do? What would you be doing at this time? Maybe you just go out with your friends and enjoy yourself. Maybe you do additional hours of working and earn more, right? So here, uh, you know, since the resources are scarce, right? We don't have unlimited amounts of resources. Scarcity of resources is the fundamental problem for every economy, right? So therefore, now because there is a scarcity of resources, every time we make a decision, we decide to do something, right? There is a hidden cost. This hidden cost we refer to as opportunity cost. Now, for example, as I have told you, now today from 2 to 5 o'clock, you would be glued to your computers and joining with me on this lecture, right? But if you have not got this, right, you may have worked at your office, right, extra hours and earn more, or else you could have watched the television, right? Or you could have gone out with your friends, right? So when you give up your second best alternative, the satisfaction that is foregone because you have given up your second best alternative is we refer to as opportunity cost. Now let's take a simple example, right? Now let's say that you have 100,000 rupees with you, right? and let's say 200,000 rupees with you, right? And you have two options, right? One is to buy a mountain bike or a machine to do exercises, right? Or else using 200,000, you could have a holiday somewhere. Now, if you decide to have the holiday, right, the opportunity cost of that is what you give up by not having your exercise machine or the mountain bike, right? If you have the mountain bike or the exercise machine, right, the opportunity cost of that is the satisfaction you give up by not having the holiday, right? So, like every decision we make, there is opportunity cost because the resources are scarce. Scarcity of resources is the fundamental problem not only for the poorer countries of the world, even for richest and the richer countries of the world. At their level, there is opportunity cost because the resources are scarce, right? So when you learn this subject, when you decide to do something, always back of your mind, you got to evaluate your opportunity cost, right? So this is one aspect of it, right? Second is the marginalism and the sunk cost, right? We always look at the marginal cost, not the average cost. Now, if I am to define what is marginal cost is additional cost of producing an additional unit. In simple terms, additional cost of producing an additional unit. Now, I just again take up an example and tell you why looking at marginal cost and thinking of sunk cost is important, right? Now, let's say, right, a person has written a textbook on economics, right? Textbook on economics, right? So you got to write the book, and then you got to do the typesetting, the page making, right? And then you got to make the plates, right? Positives, and then print it, and then bind it, right? There is a long process until you ensure that it ends up as a book, right? Okay. Let's say that you have printed 1,000 copies, spending 600,000, right? 1,000 copies spending 600,000, right? Now let's say now you're contemplating on the second print of the book. Second print of the book, right? There now there is no cost of writing it again, no cost of page setting, right? Typesetting and page setting, right? And then no cost of preparing negatives or the positives and the plates, etc. All that has been done when you had your first print, right? First edition. Now for second edition, all these are sunk cost because you have already done it, right? Cannot be recovered. You have already done it, right? So the pages are available, right? The plates are available. So it's a matter of printing it again, right? Matter of printing it again, right? So the initial cost that had to be incurred when you just, contemplating on the first print. Now, of course, you don't have to incur the same cost, right? Very much less, right? So that is why it is important for you to look at marginal cost than the average cost. Additional cost of producing an additional unit. Okay, I take another simple example, right? Let's say your mother is living in Matha, right? So you have to visit her. You have to visit her, right? At the same time, at the weekend, right? You have to make a official visit to Goal, right? You have to make an official visit to Goal at the weekend. So you have decided, okay, I would do my official visit to goal, and then afterwards I would visit my mother, right? And then the cost of visiting your mother is only whatever that would cost you traveling from goal to Mathura. It's the marginal cost, right? So it's, like now I have told you, to learn a way of thinking, the first thing is to know about the opportunity cost. The cost of giving up your second best alternative. The cost of giving up your second best alternative, opportunity cost. Then I said, you got to think of not the average cost, it is the marginal cost. Marginal cost, right? Okay? And and let's think of another example, right? Now let's say an aircraft about to be taken off with empty seats. An aircraft about to be taken off with empty seats. What is the marginal cost of an additional passenger? What is the marginal cost of an additional passenger? Now, an aircraft about to be taken off with many empty seats, what is the marginal cost of an additional passenger? Almost zero. Only, whatever it takes to offer him meals on board, nothing else. Why? Because the plane is to be taken off with empty seats, you see, right? So if you can at the last minute sell these seats at a greater discount, still the firm would gain, airline would gain, right? So these are things we don't see, like the way they are, unless we learn this subject, right? Unless we learn this subject, right? Okay, so opportunity cost, marginal cost, and the sunk cost. Now, when I was referring to that printing example, right, the initial cost of writing, page setting, plate making, all that at the second edition is a sunk cost. And when you go for the second edition, right, you don't have to incur the same cost again, only the additional printing cost, right? So now I think you have a clear understanding of what is meant by opportunity cost and also what is marginalism and sunk cost, right? And before I go into the third one, efficient market, I would highlight another important point as well. Now you see, when we categorize goods in the real world, right, there are two types of goods, right? One is economic goods, economic goods, right? Other is free goods, right? First, please tell me whether what I write here is that very visible to you. Can that be seen clearly? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right, fantastic. Right. Okay. Now, just let's learn how these two being categorized, right? When you say free goods, no resources needed, right? No resources needed. No opportunity cost, right? No scarcity, right? No price, limitless supply, right? These are the characteristics of free goods. No resources needed, no opportunity cost, no scarcity, no price, limitless supply. When you say economic goods, opposite of this. Resources needed, there is opportunity cost, there is scarcity. If there is scarcity, naturally there is opportunity cost. There is a price and not limitless supply, there is limited supply. Okay, now what are the ideal examples of free goods? Fresh air, right? Fresh air, oxygen, right? Now remember, it depends on the time and the situation. Now, if you're diving underneath the sea, fresh air is not a free good. Fresh air is not a free good. If you go into the space, fresh air is not a free good. Now, normal circumstances like now, oxygen is a free good for us, right? Sunlight, not the soap, right? Sunlight, what the light you get from the sun, that too is a free good. But again, a person who lives in, say, Antarctica, right, or North Pole or the South Pole, maybe sunlight is not a free good. If the person needs to enjoy the sunlight, he or she may have to take a flight and come to a tropical country. See? But generally, free goods, these are the characteristics. No resources needed, no opportunity cost, no scarcity, no price, limitless supply. Economic goods, whatever, like, computers, shoes, pens, right? Right? Sunglasses, all these are economic goods where resources needed, there is opportunity cost, there is scarcity, there is a price, and supply is limited. Right? I have taken that up and I have decided to highlight the difference between economic goods and the free goods because I have taught you the concept of opportunity cost, right? So you know what is opportunity cost, you know what is marginalism and sunk cost. Now let's see what is meant by efficient markets. All right. I take again two examples that you, of course, may have experienced over the years. One is when you go to a supermarket, right? When you go to a supermarket, there are several tills, right? There are several tills, right? And of course, people are lining up to settle their bills and take the goods away, right? Now, which till would you take? Of course, obviously the one that is the shortest because you want to quickly sort of finish off the transaction and get out, right? Right? But realistically, right, no queue would remain shorter for a longer time. Generally, all the queues would remain at the same length because, whenever a person sees a shorter queue, he would be lining up in that. So that way, right, right, in efficient markets, as the economies refer to as profit opportunities, would be exploited at once. Profit opportunities, riskless profit opportunities, would not remain in the market for long. Efficient markets, there is no such thing called free lunch. Same with banks, right? Same with banks. Now, whenever you walk into a bank, of course, there are several counters where the bank employees serve you, right? You generally select the shortest one, shortest queue. But in an efficient situation, right? In realistically, right? These queues would not remain shorter for long because that would be filled in, right? So therefore, all these queues would remain at the same length generally, right? Likewise, in markets where there are profit opportunities, if the market is efficient, these profit opportunities are exploited at once. See now, if you're an investor of stock market, so many tips come up, right? And millions of people are looking for these opportunities. So whenever that comes up, those who are searching for these, right, would be would grab them and they would exploit these opportunities at once. Efficient markets, right? Efficient markets. I would give you just general example for you to understand this better. right? Now let's say an economist and a non-economist, two persons walk on the road, right? An economist and a non-economist walk on the road. And the non-economist suddenly tell the economist, there is $100 note on the pavement. There is $100 note on the pavement, right? Okay. Then the economist would suddenly reply to the non-economist, there can't be, if there has been $100 note on the payment, somebody would have picked it up by now. So that is how you explain the efficiency of markets. Efficient markets, these profit opportunities would not remain for long. They would be exploited, right? So I have elaborated, right, why the economics would help you to learn a way of thinking. And under that, I have explained to you three concepts: opportunity cost, marginalism, and sunk cost, and efficient markets. I would prefer if you open your mouth and tell me whether you have understood or whether you have not understood or whether you need more elaboration. Please tell me. Please give me your feedback. Hello?
Business stuff.
ASR Adhikari. Have you understood? Adhikari? ASR Adhikari. Have you understood? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Right. Jonathan. Is that Jonathan? Have you understood?
Jonathan, sir. Yeah, I understood that. Helpful
Sorry?
if you could. I have understood the first two things, opportunity cost as well as the marginalism and the sunk cost. But helpful if you could elaborate the efficient markets with some few examples, please.
Yeah. So you have understood, right?
No, I need a bit of more explanation on the efficient markets, please.
Right. Efficient markets. Now, why I have provided you some examples on that is to show if it is efficient, right? If the market functions efficiently, these opportunities, profit opportunities that crop up, would not remain for long, that would be exploited by somebody at once. That's why I have given you those examples where, like, when you walk into a supermarket or when you walk into a bank, if a shorter line remains, that would not remain for long if it is efficient. It would be quickly filled because, everyone would be looking for the shortest line. So once you plug into that, right, naturally, if all the others do the same, generally all the lines would remain at the same length. You understand what I say? Hello?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Right. So that's why I said now, if there is $100 note on the pavement, right? Thinking of efficiency, if it is efficient, right? Somebody could have picked it up at once. That would not remain there for long. Understand? Got it?
Yeah.
Right. What about the others? Pereira, Apeksha Pereira. Hello? Hello?
Yes. Yes, sir. I have understood the concept.
All right. I would really prefer if you open up your mouth and talk, because not like physical lecturing, like where we meet each other here. Of course, we do not know who and who, and it's through online. So to make the exchange more interesting and like positive, I would really prefer if you just provide your feedback, and if you just in between raise questions, that would make the session more interesting, right? Okay. Okay. Mortige, have you understood?
Yes, sir, I'm clear.
Sorry?
I'm clear, sir.
All right, okay. Right, let's move on with the next. Right. Next is why we should learn economics is to understand society. You see now, if you just, like come out of Fort railway station on a weekday morning, you can see how many people busily coming out of these stations to go to work. And all around you see tall buildings, right? Vehicles moving, people carrying stuff, right? Lorries delivering goods, right? Right? Now, all these are the results of decisions made by can you elaborate more about efficient markets? Now, this is what, now, if you have whoever raised the question through the chat, had you straight away asked me to explain the meaning of efficient markets, I could have done it then and there, right? Now, once I have started explaining to you about why it is important to learn economics to understand society, now you through the chat asked me to explain what is efficient markets, right? So you're doing an MBA, so you must sharpen your communication skills, right? Right? Good communication is very important at all levels. So if you could not understand, please straight away ask me to explain that again, right? Okay, now I have repeatedly explained what is meant by efficient markets. Efficiency in this situation is any opportunity that comes up will be taken up, right, without wasting any time, right? Now let's say now through in a stock market, suddenly there is a good opportunity for you to make money, right? Profit opportunity, either buying a stock or selling a stock, right? So when this information comes out in an efficient market, those who are looking for these information, they would exploit that at once and they would not remain for long, right? So if an opportunity comes up and if that would not remain as it is for long and if that is exploited at once, that is referred to as efficient markets, right? Now, as I have explained, in a bank, as a queue would not remain short for long and that would be filled up in a shorter time period. In efficient markets too, these profit opportunities are exploited in a shorter time period. Have you understood now? Please answer. All right, okay, right. So to understand society, right? So here, so the buildings that you see, the roads that you see, the railroads that you see, the bridges and the big vehicles that carry various stuff, right? The delivery vans, right? All these are there because somebody has made a decision at some point, right, to construct this, right? If you look at a building, to clear the land, to draw up the plan, to lay the foundation, to put up the stories, all these are the result of decisions made by somebody at some point of time. So all what we witness when we move around, right, these are the results of decisions made by somebody at some point of time, maybe running into many years, maybe 100, 200, 300 years, right? Right? Okay. Now, like if you are a person who would enjoy traveling, in Badula, when you travel there, you see 9 arches, right? So when was that built? I think at the colonial time. So somebody made a decision at some point to do that, right? So many trains are passing through that every day, right? Right. So now 200 years back in UK there was a industrial revolution, right? That has transformed the UK economy, right, to a industrialized economy from agricultural economy, right? Okay. Now, I think in 18th century, early part of the 18th century, right, uh, 2 people out of 3 engage in agriculture in UK, right? Towards the latter part of 18th and early part of 19th, it dropped to 1 person in 3, I think. And middle of the 19th century, it was 1 person in 10. Now, in the entire UK population, about 2% engage in farming, right? So, transformation, right? Transformation. And we have witnessed in 1977, after a period of closed economy, right? We have entirely opened up the economy and we embrace open market policies. And how the economy transformed from that point, we all have witnessed, right? Right? So, if you gain knowledge in this subject, that would help you to understand how the society behaves and how the decisions are made in the society, what would be the outcome of these decisions made, right? Not only this week or the last month, the time period may run into hundreds and hundreds of years, centuries, right? Right? Okay, so learning economics would help you to understand the society as well. Understand global affairs, right? Understand global affairs. Of course, nowadays we see, right? Right? So many wars are raging in every corner of the world, right? In the Middle East, Russia and Ukraine, right? Okay, and the impact of these on the world economy in general, and particularly on economies like ours in developing countries, right? Right. So like it can be a financial crisis, it can be a food crisis, it can be a sudden increase in the price of oil in the world market, right? Okay, right? Disagreements between economic giants like USA and China, right? Okay, war situations between countries like Russia and other NATO countries, right? So, how these events shape the world economy, the impact of that on the world economy, right? Do not go that far. Think of the impact of COVID on the world economy. I think you are into supply chain management, how this has affected in maintaining the supply chains in firms, right? Right? Okay. So, like, the world means, so many events take place, right? Right? So many things happen. So, how these things shape the world economy, the impact of that on individual economies in the world, right? So that too you can understand well if you just get a deeper understanding of this subject economics, right? Okay, so I have elaborated to you. This helps you to learn a way of thinking by understanding the concept of opportunity cost, marginalism, and sunk cost, efficient markets. And this helps you to understand the society, the global affairs, right? Like be it a oil crisis or war situation in the Middle East or world food crisis, right? Or a terrorist attack in one of the major world cities, right? Okay. right? Or natural disaster, right? Right? So how these would affect the world economy as well as individual economies in the world. And classic example is the impact of COVID, right? Impact of COVID that has dragged the entire world economy into a recessionary situation. I would explain to you what is meant by recession when I deal with the macroeconomic part. Generally, recession means drop in the economic activities, right? Rising unemployment, slowing down of economic growth, right? Uh, Gloomy outlook, right? Business organizations face enormous difficulties in maintaining the market and maintaining profitability, right? So the COVID has dragged the entire world economy into a recession, right? And lastly, to be an informed voter. I think that is very important for us now, right? Since we are facing a presidential election in less than a month time, right? So to be an informed voter, generally, the prime objective of any politician or any ruler is to ensure the economic well-being of its citizens. Maybe only in Sri Lanka that is not the case, but generally all over the world, right? The prime objective of rulers is to ensure the economic well-being of its citizens, right? Economic well-being of its citizens, right? Okay, so learning this subject would help you to weigh things, look at pros and cons of various promises given. Now you see, nowadays we hear, right, all these major political parties promise the average citizen sun, moon, and the stars, right? They promise everything under the sun, right? Now, if you are an intelligent person, right? If you're an intelligent person, you would look at these things carefully. Why? The reason is now all these promises, if the politicians who make these promises, if they are to fulfill them, from where would they find resources? From where would they find money? Are they going to pocket it out? No. So they will have to raise this money from somewhere. So one obvious way of doing that is to raise taxes, right? Raise taxes. Raising taxes from those who work hard, right? Right? So those who are working hard, the organizations that make profit, they'll be taxed, right? So if you can really analyze, right, and weigh pros and cons of, uh, and also the cost of fulfilling these promises, you would think twice, right? You would think twice, right? You would not vote for the man who would come up with the biggest gift pack because you know how that is going to cost you in the short run and cost the country in the long run, like what we have observed recently. So here, right, learning this subject would make you an informed voter, right? You can weigh things, you can analyze things in economic terms, and you can look at the cost and benefit of these and decide whether these are realistic. Even if they are realistic or even if they can be fulfilled, what is the longer term cost to the country and what is the longer term cost to the individuals, the citizens, right? Right? So I have explained to you, right, the reasons why you got to learn this subject, right? All right. Under 4 points, I have elaborated why you got to learn this subject, right? And as managers, as individuals, as students, as professionals, learning this subject would stand you in good stead because would you can make use of the subject knowledge to make effective, efficient decisions. Right. Have you understood what has been explained up to now? If you have questions, please raise them. If you have understood, please say that you have understood. I
Yes.
want your responses.
Yes, sir. Understood.
Right. Others, thank you.
Yes, sir,
Others?
that's very clear.
Right. Okay. Right. Let's move on to the next one. Right. Right. See now, you see, for business organizations, for individuals, or you as a professional or a student or a housewife, right? You have to make choices. Why you have to make choices? Because resources are scarce. Scarcity of resources make you go for choices. So when you decide to do one, there is an opportunity because you forego the second best alternative of yours, right? So therefore, micro and macroeconomic environment, you got to understand that well. If you have to make efficient, effective decisions, right? All right. So you have to screen your environment. You have to analyze your environment and gain thorough knowledge of that, right? So there are different types of analytical tools that can be used to screen the environment in which you operate, right? You have pest, you have pestle, right? Political, economic, social, technological, pestle. You add to that environmental and legal, right? Then you have another management to SWOT analysis, strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. Now, here, in simple terms, pest analysis is it is political, economic, social, and technological. You can add to that pestle that is environmental and legal. All right. Right. Now, when you say political analysis, right, the behavior of the government, right, the behavior of the government, the policies of the government, how would that affect your behavior? How would that affect the organization in which you work, right? Right? They time to time they can come up with various legislations, right? Okay, maybe minimum wage policy, right? Okay, minimum wage policy. I would explain the impact of minimum wage policy when I do the demand and supply analysis, right? Product safety standards, right? Regulations on pollution, right? Okay. Provide now see last one, laws preventing collusion between firms to keep prices up. I would explain that to you so that you would understand that better, right? Now collusion, right? Now, collusion is a practice mostly done by firms in oligopoly markets. When I say oligopoly markets, if you have not done this subject, you would not understand it now. But of course, we are doing a section on the market structures. Once I do the market structures, you would definitely understand what is meant by oligopoly markets, right? Now, generally, briefly, I would explain what is an oligopoly market. Oligopoly, in an oligopoly market, there is generally you have 5 to 7 firms, right? Banks, right? Television stations, channels, right? Broadcasting, freight. Now, even insurance. Now, you can ask now if it is 5 to 7, why would you consider insurance as oligopoly market? Though we have about 22 firms in the insurance industry, only 4 to 5 larger firms control about 80% of the market. So if the market concentration is very high, if 4 to 5 larger firms share a bigger chunk of the market, then we consider that as an oligopoly, even if you have larger number of firms, more than 7, right? That is why we consider insurance industry as an oligopoly, right? Now, cellular service providers, these are telecommunication, these are oligopoly markets, motor vehicle manufacturing, right? Now, what is this collusion? Collusion means these firms get together and act like one entity, like a monopoly, and limit the output and charge a higher price. This is what you call collusive behavior. Generally, most countries legally would not allow the firms to engage in collusion. Behind the law you can, but legally you cannot do that, right? Now, laws preventing collusion. Why? Because if the firms can collude, then of course they can limit the output and charge a higher price from the people. A classic example is OPEC, Organization for Petroleum Exporting Countries. Now, just take the rice market in Sri Lanka. Why we are made to pay a very high price for a kilo of rice? This higher price would not go to the farmers, right? And the middlemen buy this from the farmers at a lower price, and the benefit would not go to the consumers either. So who is benefiting? All these big rice mill owners. They act like an informal cartel. They control the supply and charge a higher price. Right? So that is collusive behavior. Generally, the authorities discourage and introduce laws preventing this collusive behavior, because then consumers are at the receiving end. Right? So political decisions, be it in relation to taxation, providence of subsidies, recruitment of employees, right? So whatever the regulations the politicians come up with through parliament, right, that has an impact. Of course, after the COVID crisis, the Sri Lankan government has decided anyone above 60 should be made to retire. Retirement age brought down to 60 from, it was previously 60 and then it jacked up to 65, again brought down to 60 because of the unemployment problem in the country after COVID. So all these, political decisions have an impact on us as individuals, as households, as students, as professionals, and as business organizations, right? Okay. And then economic, macro, micro behavior. Now, at the beginning, I told you higher inflation, higher exchange rate, right? Lower economic growth, how that these have affected business organizations, right? Or majority of the business organizations are trying to keep their nose above the water, right? And last year, no, I think within this year, no, last year itself, 250,000 small and medium scale enterprises were shut because they could not sort of recover the cost, higher energy cost, higher electricity bills, higher taxation, right? All these have affected small and medium scale business enterprises, and SME sector in Sri Lanka is making a huge contribution to the economy in creating employment, in creating in producing goods and services. So 250,000 these organizations were shut last year. All right. So the behavior of micro macro environment impact our behavior as individuals and also as business organizations. Then social aspects, attitude towards working hours, gender equality, working conditions, right? Right? All these come under social factors, attitudes of the society, right? And technological aspects. Now, of course, we are talking about e-commerce, right? And now we talk about artificial intelligence, impact of AI on employment, right? Right? Technological revolution, right? And now we are talking about information superhighway. So how all these changes would affect our behavior. So for you to get a thorough knowledge on that, right? You should be able to properly screen political aspects, economic aspects, social aspects, and technological aspects. If you go beyond that, environmental as well as legal aspects as well, right? Pestal, pest, and SWOT. Now this is political, yeah, economic factors, right? Wider range of factors like microeconomics and macroeconomics, right? Okay. Social and cultural factors, attitude towards working conditions, the length of the working day, equal opportunities, protection of environment, the information, the technological revolution, right? Robotics, artificial intelligence, right? So, it's very important you screen these aspects and look at the behavior and the changes that take place and analyze how this would impact your behavior, maybe individually, maybe in your organization. So, have you understood why it is important for you to screen and analyze various layers of our environment, political, social, technological, right, economic, etc.? Have you? Please respond. Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Hello?
sir.
Understood?
Yeah.
Do you have any questions on this? If you have, please do raise them. Right. You see now, of course, initially we would cover microeconomics. Microeconomics, I would differentiate between micro and macro later on, right? Then we will move on to macroeconomics, right? Now here, overall, right, whatever that is taking place at the macro level, right, affect us, right? Okay, so here there are major principles being pursued by the authorities. One is nowadays the current trend is emphasizing on market mechanism, not state intervention. Now, free market mechanism means, right, you minimize the state intervention in the market because state intervention in the market distorts the behavior of market. Right? So you allow the free movement of free behavior of the market, and through the determination of the price, right? You allocate resources. I would stop at that, and I now, the once this initial part is over, we are focusing on microeconomics. Then we would start demand and supply analysis. Then, of course, you would understand what is meant by this free market mechanism, free market behavior. What is price mechanism? How the price is determined. So overall, just think one of the major principles of the authorities is to allow the free market to allocate resources, free market mechanism, right? Without state getting intervened in the intervene in the decision making. Now remember, of course, in certain areas, state intervention is a must, right? Without state intervention, you can't make checks and balances in certain aspects. Now, classic example is at the time of COVID, right? To spread this, to limit the spread of COVID, to ensure that everyone gets the right treatment, right? The state had to play a massive role in that, right? That cannot be underestimated. But when it comes to resource allocation, right, priority is given to free market mechanism, where through the free interaction of demand and supply, the resources are allocated, right? Okay, and also formulation of right type of policies to ensure stable economic environment. You see now, you would understand that better when I go into macroeconomics, right? Unstable economy means, if you look at this, unstable economy means an economy that fluctuates like this, unstable. Upswings and downswings, right? Visible gap between upswings and downswings, we call this unstable economy. Let's say 1 year the economy grows by 8% and the next year it drops to 2%. That is a wider fluctuation in the economy. So maintaining stability in the economy means you minimize these fluctuations, right? Okay. So one policy is to ensure that the market mechanism is given priority, right? Minimizing the state intervention. But as I have mentioned, you can't really underestimate and overlook the state, right? Because state plays a wider, sort of vital role when it comes to education, when it comes to health, right? In providing infrastructure, legal framework, right? Law and order. So state is playing a massive role, but overall, right? Market mechanism is given priority, right? Okay. And secondly, coming up with the right kind of macro policies, policy mix to ensure that the economy is stable and relevant objectives are achieved, right? Of course, these will be more elaborated when we reach the macroeconomic part, right? Okay. And also, outward looking national policy. Now, I told you from 77 onwards, we have embraced open market economic policies, so outward looking national policies, right? Not inward looking, right? Integrating with the world economy, promoting world trade, right? Okay, like even if you look at organizations like World Trade Organization, of course, they encourage countries to promote free trade, right? Do away with all these restrictions on free trade, right? Okay, and relaxation of control on capital mobility means, right? Capital mobility means, right? Of course, nowadays the capital moves around the world looking for the highest return, right? Those who have capital, they just, place their capital at points where they get the best return. So when you decide where to invest your capital, you look at various things: economic stability, political stability, profitability, rate of interest, exchange rate, right? All these are looked into, right? So the capital moves around the world looking for the highest return, right? Of course, some countries put restrictions on the capital mobility. In developed countries, these capital move around freely, no restrictions on the movement of capital. But of course, now some countries, you put restrictions because specifically developing countries, if you do not put restrictions, since the developing countries' economy is unstable, political environment is unstable, profitability is not assured, interest is, of course, like not stable, it fluctuates, and generally nominal interest rate tends to be very high. Exchange rate, of course, the domestic currency tends to depreciate. So all these would make those with the capital in these countries to invest their capital in other places. So, of course, these countries put restrictions on capital mobility. But overall, right, it is believed that you should allow the capital to move around freely if those who are with the capital to gain maximum out of that, right? So, these are the three major areas, right, where the policymakers sort of concentrate on. One is to giving priority on market mechanism and minimizing state intervention. But remember, you can't just think that state intervention is not necessary and that would act as a spanner in the cogwheel. No, specifically after the COVID, we have realized the importance of state intervention. But state intervention should not hinder the efficient functioning of the market, right? And then, of course, coming up with right kind of policy mix to ensure economic stability and the growth, right? And also pursuing outward-looking economic policies, right? National policies, right? So have you understood why it is important to pursue market mechanism and minimize the state intervention? Why it is, of course, still you do not know what is this right kind of policy mix. When we embark on the macroeconomic part, I would elaborate on what these policies are and how these policies can be used in achieving different macro goals, right? And also pursuing outward-looking national policies where you promote free trade, right? Allowing capital to move around freely. So these are the areas that should be given priority to. Have you understood? Please respond.
Yes, understood, sir.
Right, fantastic. Right. Right. So when you think of economic policies, the criteria to look at the economic policies, one is efficiency. Now, generally, efficiency means input versus output, right? Now, in economics, right, look at this, you call it economic efficiency. Economic efficiency. Right? When you say economic efficiency, right, that is allocative efficiency, and the other one is productive efficiency, right? Right? When you say economic efficiency, that is allocative efficiency plus productive efficiency, right? Now, when you say allocative efficiency, I think you can recall, I have defined to you what is meant by marginal cost. Additional cost of producing an additional unit we refer to as marginal cost. Now, when you refer to allocative efficiency is achieved when the marginal cost of production is equivalent to the unit price. When the marginal cost is equivalent to the unit price, right? When you say productive efficiency is achieved when you produce the output at the lowest average cost. When you produce the output at the lowest average cost, you achieve the productive efficiency. When the marginal cost of production is equal to the unit price, you achieve the allocative efficiency. So one of the way to check the effectiveness of policies is to look at the efficiency level. Now remember, too much government interference, taxation, too much regulations, you call it red tape, right? Bureaucracy, that can retard the level of efficiency, that can make the economy inefficient. So suppose that, because of too many rules and regulations, right? Red tape, right? If it takes longer, or if it is cumbersome for you to approve an investment plan, what happens? You can't stimulate investments. So lower investments means that will have an adverse impact on the economy, inefficient. Too much of taxation. Now let's say, working people are taxed heavily. Then what? If working more and earning more means you are liable to pay more taxes, you would not work much. So you would think, why would you work that much if you have to pay taxes more than what you earn? All right. So these taxation and other rules and regulations of the government can act in a negative way, right? It can make the whole economy inefficient, right? So remember, when you talk about the efficiency, if it is economic efficiency, there are two aspects to that. One is allocative efficiency, where the marginal cost of production is equivalent to unit price, and the other one is productive efficiency, where you produce the output at the lowest cost. Then the equity. Of course, when we talk about, income disparity, there is a huge gap between the income levels of the richer segment of the society and the poorer segment of the society. Not only in the society, even if you take the world as a whole, right? There's a huge income disparity between the richer countries and the poorer developing countries. The reality is, right, 75% of the world population living in 75% of the world population living in developing countries have access to only 1/3 of world resources. Have access to only 1/3 of world resources, whereas 25% of the world population living in richer developed countries have access to 2/3 of the world resources. So you can see the disparity. Even country-wise, right? Even country-wise, you can see a huge income disparity. The gap between the income levels of the richer segment of the society and the poorer segment of the society. One way to look at this income disparity, I would advise you, like, at MBA level, more or less it is self-learning. How do you do that? Now, of course, so many avenues available. You got to do reading a lot. Read these important journals, important articles, right? Okay, I will give you an idea of how to look at this income disparities, right? There is an index called Gini coefficient. Gini coefficient, right? It looks at the income disparities of the societies in the world, right? Today, once you finish the lecture, if you have time, or tomorrow, when you have free time, go to the internet and search this. What is Gini coefficient? And what is the Gini coefficient, the figure for Sri Lanka? Why it is so? You look at it. And I will ask you at the next lecture, right? So that would explain the income disparities. And then, of course, the growth, right? See, now you may have, if you have read, if you have sort of gathered information, right? You may know by now, the last 2 years, we had a negative economic growth. Negative economic growth, right? Now, when you say economic growth, you look at the economic growth in two ways. One is the increase in real output, right? GDP, you call it real GDP, real gross domestic product, real gross domestic product, right? One way of looking at the economic growth is the increase in real GDP, right? Other one is the per capita income. Per capita income, per person national income, right? That's why one time we were categorized as, one time in fact we reached the upper middle income status, looking at the per capita income of Sri Lanka. Upper middle income. And then, of course, again, we drop back to lower middle income. Now we are a lower middle income country, right? Okay, you have less developed countries, lower middle income, upper middle income, and the developed countries, right? Okay, so the ways to look at economic growth is by looking at the growth in real GDP or real output and the per capita income, right? Okay, so the criteria, one is looking at the level of efficiency, the equity, right? Equitable distribution of income, growth, and stability. I have taught you what is meant by stability. Stability means minimizing fluctuations in the economy. If the economy fluctuates, there are visible upswings and downswings in the economy. That economy is unstable. In an unstable economic environment, everything else becomes unstable, right? So these are the four areas, right? Efficiency, equity, growth, and stability. Have you understood, please? Hello? Hello, have you understood?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Right. Now, right. Here I
Yes.
have differentiated between microeconomics and macroeconomics, right? Microeconomics and macroeconomics, right? Now, when you say microeconomics, you're focusing on smaller entities of the economy, small entities of the, as the terms implies, micro, right? Individual entities of the economy. Now, you may look at, the demand and supply conditions of one particular commodity, oil, right? Sugar, right? Rice, right? Okay, demand and supply conditions of these, and how the demand and supply conditions behave in the market, and what is the impact of that on the price level in the market, right? Okay, okay. So these kind of behaviors in individual entities, right? We learn under microeconomics, right? And also, right, firms make decisions like how to combine factors of production like land, labor, capital, etc. How to combine these to produce goods, right? So, how the firms make decisions on the combination of factor inputs, right? Minimization of cost, right? Right? These are microeconomic aspects, right? The consumers, how the consumers behavior, right? How the consumers behave, right? For example, their behavior depends on their income, the price of goods, right? Okay, so consumer behavior. Why the consumers? Why it is believed that the consumers behave rationally. Now you see what is meant by rational behavior of consumers. Generally, we believe that consumers behave rationally. What is meant by rational behavior is whenever you make a decision, right, marginal cost of that decision should not be higher than the marginal benefit. Now, marginal benefit means the benefit that you gain by consuming an additional unit. I have defined the marginal cost of producing an additional unit. Now, if you make a decision in which marginal cost is higher than the marginal benefit, that we consider as irrational behavior. I give you an example. Now, let's say you do not like classical music. You do not like classical music. You do not enjoy classical music, right? And if you walk into a music bar and buy a classical recording, that is considered as irrational behavior. Irrational behavior, right? So remember, under microeconomics, you're looking at how the individual entities behave in the economy, right? Now you see, when I was talking about political aspects, right? I mentioned to you about collusive behavior of oligopolies, right? I have given you the example of rice market. Now remember, right, these market structures also comes under microeconomics, one of the important areas of microeconomics. Now, at the as the final part of microeconomics, well, we learn market structures, right? Now, under market structures, there are four different types of markets, right? Perfect competition, monopoly, monopolistic competition, oligopoly. Now these markets, we learn how they make the pricing decision, how they make the output decision, right? How they make the profit maximizing price and output decision, advertising decisions, product differentiation decisions, right? All these come under microeconomics, right? So remember, you should know by now, when you say microeconomics, it is, we are looking at individual entities of the economy. As I have said, how the demand and supply conditions of sugar, how the demand and supply conditions of onions, right? Okay, how the demand and supply conditions of petrol and diesel, how they behave, and how that behavior affect the price level in the economy, right? How the firms decide to combine factors of production, right? Given the income, given the price, how would the consumers behave? Like why we consider consumer behavior, why we consider that majority of the consumers behave rationally, right? So all these come under microeconomics, right? Macroeconomics means it is the bigger picture, overall performance of the economy, right? We call it bird's eye view of the economy. We look at the entire economy from the top. I told you at the very beginning, whatever that takes place in the macro level, at the macro level, have a tremendous impact on us as individuals as well as organizations, right? Here we look at the macroeconomic indicators are, right, economic growth rate, right? I told you the gross domestic product, gross national product. Of course, the meaning of these terms, I would give you the definitions once we come to the macroeconomics, right? The rate at which the average price level increases in the economy, we call that inflation, right? What is the rate of unemployment in the economy, right? Right, out of that total labor force, what is the percentage of unemployed, right? Exchange rate behavior, movement of the exchange rate, how that affects the import and exports of a country. Now you see, of last 2 years, the Sri Lankan rupee depreciated heavily against the American dollar. And that has tremendously affected the price level, average price level of the economy, because you know Sri Lanka is a country where we largely depend on imports for essentials. Fuel we import, essential items we import. Most of the things we import. The things that we export, of course, very limited, right? So when the exchange rate depreciates, all what we import, we have to pay more in terms of rupees because rupee has depreciated. So that pushes up the average price level in the domestic markets. That is why we have experienced very high rates of inflation about a few months back, right? So exchange rate movements are very important. I'm sure most of you, those who sort of engage in supply chain management, right? Of course, you know that sometimes if you are relying on importation for your inputs, if there are certain amount of imported inputs in your production, right? Depreciation has, of course, pushed up the prices of these inputs, thus the cost of production, right? Okay, so the exchange rate. Of course, you know, balance of payments, I would just give you a brief idea of what is meant by balance of payment. Like, you know, the firms maintain loss profit account. Countries also have a balance sheet where they record transactions that will bring them foreign exchange in and the transactions that send the foreign exchange out, right? So generally balance of payment got to be balanced, right? Here you're recording transactions of the domestic residents with the residents of the outside world. The transactions the domestic residents carry out with the residents of the other parts of the world, right? So that is generally what is meant by balance of payment, right? So there are different macroeconomic indicators, as I mentioned: rate of inflation, rate of unemployment, economic growth rate, exchange rate. All these, the behavior, you must have the knowledge to analyze how these behave, the impact of that on your on your maybe your organization, maybe individually. So for you to clearly understand the impact, you should have the knowledge to analyze its behavior, their behavior, right? So through economics, we gain the necessary knowledge for us to analyze the behavior of these macroeconomic aspects, right? So I think now you have a clear understanding of the difference between micro and macroeconomics. Is that clear to you, the difference between micro and macroeconomics? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Clear, sir.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Okay. Right. Let's look at the difference between economy and economics, right? Now, when you say economy, right, you're looking at the mechanism. So I have mentioned to you there are factors of production: land, labor, capital, right? All these structures, vehicle, equipment, and all these come under capital. Natural resources come under land, right? So these factors should be organized to fulfill the needs and wants of those who live in the society. So economy means the mechanism through which these factors of production like land, labor, capital, etc., are organized to fulfill the wants and needs of the people who live in the society. The mechanism, economy. Economics means it is the study of how to use these limited productive resources to satisfy unlimited wants and needs of the people living in that society. The study how to use the limited available resources to fulfill most of the unlimited wants and needs of those who live in the society, right? So that is the difference in economic and economics. Economy is the mechanism. Economics is we are studying how to use these scarce resources to fulfill most of the unlimited wants and needs of the people, right? Now you see, as I have mentioned to you at the very beginning, the fundamental problem every economy encounters is the unlimited wants and needs on one hand, and the limited resources on the other hand. How to use the limited resources to fulfill most of the wants and needs of the people. So the scarcity is the fundamental problem. And if you look at the definitions of economics in any textbook or any other source, you can see the term scarcity is given priority, right? This is highlighted because scarcity is the fundamental problem faced by all the economies around the world. Yeah. Economics is the study of how human beings make choices to use scarce resources as they aim at satisfying their seemingly unlimited wants and needs, right? So it is learning how to use these scarce resources to fulfill most of the unlimited wants and needs of human beings, right? Okay, as you can see here, yeah. On one hand, the resources are limited. On the other hand, you have unlimited wants and needs. So bridging this gap and fulfilling most of the needs and wants of those who live in the society is the fundamental task, right? So scarcity is the fundamental problem. Because of the scarcity, you have to make choices because you make choices, opportunity cost occurs, and you know the meaning of the concept opportunity cost. The cost of giving up your second best alternative, the cost of giving up your second best alternative, right? That is the opportunity cost. So on one hand, you have unlimited wants and needs. Now, say for example, now you would want to finish this MBA, right? Maybe 1 year or maybe 2 years, you complete the MBA. And after completing the MBA, you may want to do a PhD. So, unlimited wants and needs, right? You buy a particular vehicle this month, another 8 to 10 months, you may want to buy a better version or better quality vehicle, right? You may walk into a shop today and you buy a shirt and a trouser. Another 2, 3 weeks time, you may want to buy a different one. So, human beings, we have unlimited wants, right? Okay, and to fulfill them, we don't have unlimited resources. Resources are limited, right? So that is we call scarcity. So the scarcity is the fundamental problem, and do not think this is only relevant to poorer countries in the world. No, it is relevant to even the richest economy in the world, that is USA, right? Maybe for them it is different, right? Maybe some of them to settle down in Mars, right? Okay, some of them to have a luxury sports vehicle, right? Okay, so at their level, scarcity exists, right? So because of the scarcity, you make choices, and when you make choices, that results in opportunity cost, right? Okay, yeah. What is the key issue that arises from the existence of scarcity? Opportunity cost. The cost of choosing to use resources for one purpose is the sacrifice of the next best alternative for the use of those resources. I have given you enough examples, right? Right. Now let's say that you have to submit an assignment on economics tomorrow. You have to submit an assignment on economics tomorrow. That tomorrow is the deadline. If it is later than that, coordinator will not accept your assignment, right? Okay. So of course, generally we all tend to do the assignment at the last minute, right? So now you keep writing the assignment, you refer the sources, you gather the information, and you keep writing the assignment, right? And next room, your brothers and your other members of the family, right, watch the cricket match between Sri Lanka and England and enjoy the match. But you can't do that because you got to finish your assignment. So the opportunity cost of completing your assignment is the satisfaction you give up by not watching the match. Right? So, like as I've said, there is resources involved, right? There is always opportunity cost, right? So opportunity cost is vital because when you make a decision, when you go for, now say that there are 3 investment decisions, all right? 3 investment decisions, A, B, C, right? Return on investment A is this much, return on investment B is this, and return on investment 3 is this. So if you go for the investment A, the opportunity cost of your decision is the return you give up by not going for your second best alternative, right? Let's say that you have pumped 1 million into your business, 1 million rupees into your business. The opportunity cost of that is the interest income you could have earned by depositing that 1 million in a fixed deposit, right? Okay, right? So this opportunity cost is vital. See now, I give you a very classic example for you to understand, right? Right? See now the Sri Lankan government, especially the central bank, is keep reducing the rate of interest. They bring down the rate of interest, right? They bring down the rate of interest. The purpose of bringing down this interest rate is to encourage people to invest, right? Because generally if the interest rate is high, people prefer to put that money in the bank on a fixed deposit and earn the return from that. But if the interest rate is lower, no point in depositing this money in accounts because the return is lower. The best thing is for you to invest them in other options where the return is higher. So generally why the government is now, or the authorities is now bringing down the rate of interest is to encourage people to invest, because without investments you can't stimulate the economy. Because currently the rate of the level of investment is not that satisfactory. But the thing that what the government has not understood is interest rate is only one aspect you consider when it comes to investments. There are other aspects you look into: return on investments, profitability, stability, and if the economy is unstable, if the political situation is unstable, you are not sure of making a profit, then of course, even if the interest rate is lower, you will not go for investments, right? That is why investments remain at lower levels even if the interest rate is lower. Generally, highlighting this concept of opportunity cost, when the interest rate is lower, without you investing in fixed deposits, you may start buying shares where the return is high, right? So the investments at the share market will go up because people see that as a better option than depositing in fixed deposits, right? So this is again opportunity cost, right? Now see, you have paid 200,000 rupees to higher education academy to follow a full-time course in information technology. What is the actual opportunity cost of this decision? Can one of you tell me? You have paid 200,000 to a higher education academy to follow a full-time course in information technology. What is the actual opportunity cost of this decision? Can one of you tell me?
There is no opportunity cost.
Huh?
There is no opportunity cost.
No opportunity cost.
No, by the second and third alternatives, there are no second and third alternatives to sacrifice.
Now, what if this two naturally we all have second and third alternatives. Now, what with these 200,000? If you have if you have contemplated on having a holiday in Thailand before paying for this, we all have second and third options. We can't say there is no second option, there is no third option.
In this case,
No, of course, here, now we can't assume that there are no alternatives. Definitely there is an alternative. Suppose you do not register for this course. What would you do with this 200,000? You burn it?
No, sir, now we can deposit that money also.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Is that all? Is that all? Very good, because I don't want you to come up with the perfect answers, because this is a learning process. If you know the subject, you wouldn't be joining this lecture, right? We join because we want to learn. So I won't expect you to give the correct answer all the time, but I appreciate, right or wrong, if you participate, right? Participation is important, right? Through discussion, we can learn, right? Okay, right. One is depositing this 200,000 in a fixed deposit. What else?
you can go on a trip.
Making the business.
Yeah. But now,
Spending on a trip.
yeah, once you pay this 200,000 and join this course, right, full time, means what? You got to attend the lectures full time, and you are not in a position to do even a job. So the income you forego by not working somewhere else also is an opportunity cost. You understand what I say? You participate
Yes.
in lectures, you have to pursue your education full time, so you will have no time to do a job and earn extra income. That is also considered as opportunity cost. All the hidden cost is the opportunity cost, right? Okay. So not only the monetarily what you see, there are other hidden costs as well, right? That is why this concept of opportunity cost is very important when it comes to decision making, right? Okay. So I think now you know what is scarcity, right? Scarcity is the result of people having unlimited wants and needs, and to fulfill them, the available resources are limited. So the scarcity is the fundamental problem of every economy. Scarcity, because of the scarcity, people are made to make choices. And when you make choices, opportunity cost results in, right? Opportunity cost results in, right? Okay. Right. Let's go into understand these concepts through models, right? Right? Because you know, in economics, right, there are so many models available for us to understand these vital concepts, right? So let's learn some of these, right? Of course, you know, like we have limited number of hours to cover this important subject, right? Now, my job is for you to provide as much knowledge as possible within this limited number of hours, and also to make you interest in learning this subject afterwards, right? To stimulate you. And then, of course, you can engage in self-learning and gain broader knowledge of this subject, and that would stand in good stead when it comes to decision making, right? So let's make this journey an interesting one, so that you got to participate, you got to join with me, and you got to show your interest. And also discipline is very important, joining these lectures and remaining with the lecture until the last minute, right? Discipline, I strictly believe in maintaining discipline. I just want that, right? Because one of the major problems why we could not raise up or we could not climb up the development ladder is lack of discipline. So at every layer, we must ensure that we can improve our discipline and sort of be part of a disciplined society, right? So remember, uh, in this learning process, not only the economics, we learn other aspects as well, right? Okay, right. Now, I would use this model production possibility curve analysis for you to sort of understand these concepts in a more constructive way, right? First, what I would do is I would use my camera and explain them. And then I would go into the slide, then you can have a better knowledge on this, right? Now remember, this production possibility curve analysis is built upon several assumptions, right? The first assumption is the economy can produce only two goods. Let's say, for example, clothing and food. The economy can produce only two goods, food and clothing, right? It can be anything, guns and butter, right? Okay, bananas and apples, right? So only two goods can be produced, right? And the resource base of the economy is fixed during the period under consideration. That means normally, generally, we consider the time period as 1 year. Within that 1 year, the resource base of the economy is fixed, constant, right? Okay. And the resources can be combined. Resources can be combined in any way to produce the given two goods. But certain resources are ideal to produce one good than the other. For example, let's say right? If you look at a person who is very good at operating a sewing machine, he is ideal to produce clothing than food. And if you have a person having good knowledge of how to operate a tractor, he is good at producing food than the garments, right? So the first assumption is only two goods can be produced. Second assumption is the resource base of the economy is fixed during the period under consideration. Third assumption is the resources can be combined in any way to produce the given two goods. Fourth assumption is the technology is constant. There is fixed technology, right? So these are the four assumptions on which the model production possibility curve is built upon, right? Now, look at this. Based on these assumptions, right? Now, let's say this is the clothing. This axis, it is clothing. This is food, right? And this is the production possibility curve of the economy. This is the production possibility curve of the economy, PPC, right? So what does this imply? Okay, I will explain, right? If the economy channels all its resources to produce only clothing, this is the maximum amount of clothing that can be produced, right? If the economy channels all of its resources to produce only food, this is the maximum amount of food that can be produced. And the line indicates different combinations of two goods that can be produced, remember, when resources are used to the maximum efficiency. I told you at the very beginning, one of the criterion is efficiency. All right, efficient allocation of resources. So if an economy utilizes its resources to the maximum efficiency, your production level lies on the PPC, right? So if only clothing is produced, this is the maximum amount of clothing produced. If only food is produced, this is the maximum amount of food produced. And this is the combinations of the two goods that can be produced if all the resources are used to the maximum efficiency, maximum efficiency. Now, when I was talking about the macroeconomy, I referred to one aspect as recession. I said after the COVID, the world economy has gone into recession. So when there is a recession, the production level moves inside the PPC like this. Forget about that. I have just mentioned to you what happens when there is a recession, because I want you to understand, to reach the PPC, you have to utilize the resources to the maximum efficiency. Then only your production level would remain on the PPC, right? Your production level remain on the PPC, right? So if only clothing is produced, this is the maximum amount of clothing that is produced. If only food is produced, this is the maximum amount of food that is produced. This would indicate different combinations of the two goods that can be produced. Let's look at the slide now, right? Yeah. Yeah, of course, it is the coconuts and the fish. This dark blue line indicates, right? Yeah, feasible and efficient. All right, efficient allocation of resources. If resources are used to the maximum efficiency, you would lie on the PPG of the economy, right? Okay, right? So this is efficient levels of production, right? Right. Now see this. Again, I come to the same thing, right? Look at this. I would draw that up again. food, clothing, right? This is the production possibility curve, right? Okay. So what happens is this is the maximum amount of clothing, this is the maximum amount of food. If resources are utilized only to produce clothing and only to produce food, right? These are the combinations of the two groups. Now, if you move this way, what happens is you reduce the amount of clothing produced in the economy and you channel the resources, you channel these resources to produce food. Now let's look at 2 points here, A and B, and also C and D, right? You're looking at 2 positions. Now moving from A to B, you reduce this much of clothing. You reduce this much of clothing and you are able to produce this much of food, right? This is what you call the opportunity cost, right? You're reducing this much of clothing and add this much of food, opportunity cost, moving from A to B. Now let's look at what happens when you move from C to D, right? C to D. You're sacrificing this much of clothing, yet you are able to produce only this much of food. Now, what do you see here? What do you see? Here, by sacrificing small amount of clothing, you are able to produce this much of food. But here, by sacrificing even a large amount of clothing, you are able to produce only a lesser amount of food. You call this increasing opportunity cost. Increasing opportunity cost, right? Moving from A to B and moving from C to B, as you move along the curve to the right, the opportunity cost is increasing. Why? Why the opportunity cost is increasing? Opportunity cost is increasing because when you move that way, the resources that are ideal to produce clothing, now you channel them to produce food. You take a person who is working on a sewing machine, now you get him to work on the field to produce food. So as you move this way, little by little, the resources that are ideal to produce clothing, you drag them into produce food. That is why the opportunity cost is increasing. So I have taught you the assumptions on which the model production possibility curve is built upon, right? And also I have taught you how to reach how to ensure that the production level of the economy reaches the PPC. That is when you utilize the resources to the maximum efficiency. And also using this PPC, I have taught you the concept opportunity cost when the production possibility curve is bowed out like this, concave to the origin, that reflects increasing opportunity cost. Have you understood?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Understood, sir.
Right. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Right. Now, okay, we move beyond. Okay, let's go into the next slide. See here, right? If you look at this point to this point, you reduce the coconut production by 5 million nuts here, 30 to 25, and increase the fish production by 20 million tons here, see? But look at from this point A to here, you reduce the coconut production by 25 million nuts and only add again another 20 million more fish, tons of fish, right? So the opportunity cost is increasing. Why? Because when you move this way, resources that are ideal to produce coconut, you drag them into produce fish. That's why the opportunity cost is increasing. But remember, right, theoretically, right, theoretically, if the production possibility curve is a straight line like this, if the production possibility curve is a straight line like this, okay, that reflects, if the production possibility curve is a straight line like this, that reflects fixed opportunity cost. Fixed opportunity cost. Right? Theoretically, this is the most realistic increasing opportunity. Because, but you know, like in macroeconomics, when we learn international trade, etc., we use this straight line PPC that reflects fixed opportunity cost, right? Now, also, now here, because of the scarcity, right? When you increase the production of one, you reduce the production of the other, right? When you increase the production of one, you reduce the production of the other because of the scarcity. And also you can make a choice whether to produce only clothing, only food, or at point B, this much of clothing and this much of food, or at point D, this much of clothing and this much of food. So the concept choice, concept scarcity, and concept opportunity cost can be explained from the production possibility curve analysis, right? Okay. So I told you, right? I told you, right? Clothing, food. And this is the production possibility curve, right? And when you use the resources to the maximum efficiency, you land on the PPC, right? Okay, I would give you an example, right? Let's say we all know, right? Upcountry, the soil condition and the climatic condition is ideal to grow tea, right? Soil condition and the climatic condition is ideal to grow tea. Now let's imagine a decision is made to uproot all the tea bushes in the upcountry and plant coconut instead. Now all of us know upcountry the soil condition and the climatic condition is not ideal to plant coconut. That is inefficient allocation of resources. So when resources are used inefficiently, you land on a point, the production level of the economy lands on a point which is inside the PPC. We call it inefficient levels of production. Inefficient levels of production. I give you another classic example, right? I don't know whether you remember. In 1980s and 90s, right, the Soviet Union and the United States of America, right, they engaged in what we termed as a Cold War. That means covertly they were strengthening their war capabilities and trying to keep each other at bay, right? Okay. So they were spending billions and billions on strengthening their defense capacities, right? And they developed satellites to spy on each other, spending billions and billions of dollars. Of course, after early 1990s, when the Soviet Union collapsed, the threat of Cold War receded because, Soviet Union became so weaker. They got fragmented and some other states got their own independence, so they became weaker. So the threat of Cold War receded, right? Then the satellites that were developed spending millions and millions of dollars, now no point because they didn't have to spy on each other. There was no real threat of Cold War. Then, of course, the Americans used these satellites, built spending billions and billions of dollars. They used these satellites to track down on drug traffickers from South America. Inefficient allocation of resources. Inefficient allocation of resources. And we also have a classic example, some time back, we built an airport spending billions and billions of dollars at Mattala, right? During the previous government, they decided to store paddy in that. They stored paddy in Mattala. That is inefficient allocation of resources. So when resources are allocated inefficiently, right, you land on a point which is inside the PPC, right? Inefficient allocation of resources. Now remember, I mentioned to you when you're on the PPC, to increase the production of one, you got to reduce the production of the other, right? When you're on the PPC, to increase the production of one, you got to reduce the production of the other, like this, right? But when you are inside the PP, that is when you use the resources inefficiently to increase the production of one, you do not have to reduce the production of the other. For example, let's say you're moving from this point to here, X, amount of clothing would remain the same and you increase the production of food. Say that you move on to a point Y here, amount of food that you have produced remain the same, but you have increased the production of clothing. And if you move on to a point like Z here, you increase the production of both. You don't have to sacrifice one to increase the other, unlike when you're on the PPC, right? So I have taught you what is meant by inefficient allocation of resources, how that can arise, okay? And same way, think of a point which is outside the PPC here. There's a point B here. We call this unattainable levels of production. Unattainable levels of production. Right? That means given the technology, given the resources available, economy cannot attain a point which is outside the PPC. We call this unattainable levels of production. Let me show you, right? Look at this. Here, see, not feasible. Point D, unattainable, because given the technology, given the resource base, you cannot attain a point which is outside the PPC. C, feasible but not efficient. So from C, you can increase the production without sacrificing the production of the other, right? So have you understood what is meant by inefficient allocation of resources and unattainable levels of production? Hello?
Yes.
Hello?
Yes, sir, yes.
Right. Right. Okay. Now, I would use this to explain a few things, right? Now, say I would take the same two goods, right? Food and clothing, right? And let's say this is the production possibility curve, right? Let's say this is the production possibility curve of the economy, right? Now let's say, right, say that you are into garment manufacturing. Suppose that there has been a technological advancement in the garment manufacturing sector, right? Technological advancement. Technological advancement in one sector of the economy would push the production possibility curve outwards from that end, enabling the economy to produce more of both. Now, let's say with the technological advancement, previously, if you needed 3 people to produce a unit of clothing, with the technological advancement, now you need only 1 person. So, additional 2 remaining ones, you can make use of them to produce food. So that is why when there is technological advancement in one sector of the economy, that enables the economy to produce more of both. But from this end, the amount of food remains the same. Why? The reason is, since we assume that there is no advancement in the food production sector, if you utilize all the resources to produce only food, the amount of food that can be produced will not change, that will remain the same. That is why from this end, it will remain the same. So this is what will happen if there is technological advancement in only one sector of the economy. Same way, clothing, food. If there is a technological advancement in food, not clothing, the production possibility curve would shift from that end like this, enabling the economy to produce more of both. But if all the resources are channeled only to produce clothing, then the amount would not change, right? This is what will happen when there is technological advancement in only one sector of the economy. Now, see this, right? When I was talking about macroeconomy, I mentioned to you about economic growth. I said to you, economic growth is increasing the real GDP, that means real output or the per capita income. Now, using the production possibility curve, you can explain the concept economic growth. This is all right. This is, let's say, y and x axis. This is the initial production possibility curve. This is the initial production possibility curve, right? Right. With the growth, what happens is the production possibility curve will move outwards. That means the economy is able to produce more goods and services. Now, with the growth, hitherto unattainable levels of production, like as indicated at point B, now can be attained with the growth, because the growth will push the production possibility curve outwards, and because the economy is now able to produce more goods and services. This can happen when there is technological advancement. When the economy finds new resources, let's say we find oil and gas in the seabed, that can push the production possibility curve outwards. When there is improvement in quantity and quality of human resource, human capital, as well as other production factors, right? Enhancement in labor force and the efficiency level of the productivity. All these can push the production possibility curve outwards. This is what you refer to as economic growth. This is the new production possibility curve with the growth, right? Okay, so this is how you explain the concept of economic growth using the production possibility curve, right? Right. One more thing with the production possibility curve. Yeah. See this economic growth. When there is economic growth, the production possibility curve moves outwards, right? So why this happens when there is technological advancement, improvement in the quantity and quality of human resource, human capital, physical resources, labor force enhancement, all these can, finding new resources can push the production possibility curve outwards. That means more goods and services produced, and we refer to that as economic growth, right? One more thing with the production possibility curve. You know, production possibility curve analysis is used, right, to explain, right, trade-offs between different classes of goods. Trade-offs between different classes of goods, right? We can use the production possibility curve analysis to explain trade-offs between different classes of goods, right? And I show you, right? Okay. Now, this is one of the common examples, right? We call that gun and butter example. Gun and butter example, right? Let's say guns, butter. Right? Now, what is meant by guns means military goods, right? What is meant by butter is consumer goods. Okay, what is meant by guns is military goods. What is meant by butter is consumer goods, right? Now, let's see how this analysis can be used to understand the trade-offs between different classes of goods, right? Now, let's say like this can be applied to our situation very well, right? Let's say, right, before finishing the war, right, the authorities had to channel more and more resources to produce military goods to fight the war. So what happens? Economy moves this way. That means more resources are channeled to produce military goods, therefore less amount of consumer goods produced. This is what will happen when a country engages in a war, right? But after ending the war, now what? Economy moves this way. What does that mean? Now, you can shift away the resources from the military goods to produce more consumer goods. Now see, after finishing the war, we have observed those who fought the war, they of course started constructing roads, parks, and repairing various other infrastructures, etc. Various other infrastructures, etc. Right? So therefore, you know, when there is peace, right? We refer to that as peace dividends. The economy moves from this point to this, right? Moving away from channeling resources to produce more of military goods to produce consumer goods. So like, we can use the I really could not grasp the meaning of this. We were taking the one point to another point. The opportunity cost goes high, slope of the curve is also go high. But if we consider diminishing slope remains high, what do you mean by that? Now, I don't know whether you have meant this, right? Whether you have meant this, right? I could not really grasp the meaning of this question, but hopefully, if you have meant this. Now, if the curve is like this, right, that reflects increasing opportunity because I have taught you why, right? So moving this way, you got to sacrifice more and more of one to produce the other. Then I mentioned to you, if the production possibility curve is a straight line, that reflects fixed opportunity cost. Slope is cost, right? Then theoretically, this is more realistic, right? This is more realistic. Theoretically, the fixed opportunity cost is explained by using a straight line PPC, right? And if this is of course theoretically okay, but realistically not that much relevant, right? If the production possibility curve is like this, right, that reflects decreasing opportunity cost. Here, you sacrifice only this much to produce this, but here, see, even by sacrificing a smaller amount, you increase the production of this by a bigger margin. So if the production possibility curve is like this, that is referred to as decreasing opportunity cost. This is increasing opportunity cost. This is fixed opportunity cost. Why I did not explain this at the beginning is, since this is not that realistic, these two at least you can consider. Right? This is decreasing opportunity cost, but theoretically, this is also relevant, right? I don't know whether this is what you have meant, because going through the lines of your question, I could not really grasp what you meant. I have just assumed that this is what you have meant. Is that what you have meant? Hello? Hello? Can you please answer? Hello? Is that what you have meant? The one who raised the question, is that what you have meant? Please answer. Hello? One starting with the letter M, is that what you have meant? No answer. All right, okay. Right. Right. Okay, so going back to this, right? The production possibility curve can be used to explain the trade-offs between different classes of goods. Now we have observed after finishing the war, those who fought the war started constructing roads, constructing parks, etc. So you move from here to here, you call that peace dividends. So I have used the model production possibility curve to explain different aspects, different concepts, including economic growth, increasing opportunity cost, right? And the trade-offs between different classes of goods. So have you understood these? And if you have any questions, please ask them. Hello? Have any questions? And if you have any gray areas, you can ask the questions now. Please do respond, say whether you have understood or whether you have any questions. Hello? Hello?
Yes, yes, sir.
Huh?
Understood.
I can't hear you properly.
Yes, sir. Yes, I understood.
All right. Okay.
It's clear.
Right. 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 There are revision activities as well, right? If you want, you can try them, and if you have any questions, you can ask. I would only explain this one, right? How would the decision to produce capital good or consumer goods determine the growth of an economy? That is an important one. I will explain that to you, right? Now remember, capital means, right, the man-made things that would aid in production, factories, vehicles, equipment, right? Okay, all these are capital. Man-made things that would aid production, right? Now, countries gain higher growth when they can accumulate capital, right? If the country is able to produce more and more capital, that country is capable of achieving higher growth. So capital accumulation is one of the major factors that stimulate economic growth. Now here the question is, how would the decision to produce capital good or consumer goods determine the growth of the economy? That too can be explained using the production possibility curve analysis. Now look at this. This is important. That is why I only answered that question, right? Now see this. I would take two economies, right? I would take two economies, right? A and B, right? Okay. Both countries have the resources to produce capital goods and consumer goods. Capital goods and the consumer goods, right? There are two countries. Both countries have the resources to produce both capital goods and the consumer goods, right? Okay, these are the initial production possibility curves, right? Okay. Now suppose country A utilizes more of its resources to produce capital goods than the consumer goods. So both countries have the resources to produce capital goods and consumer goods, but country A is producing more capital goods and less consumer goods, and country B is producing more consumer goods and less capital goods. This is the production position of country B. This is the production position of country A. Now, based on how they utilize their resources to produce capital goods and consumer goods, this is how the growth will take place, right? Country A, country B. What does it show? Country A is experiencing very high rate of growth, whereas the country B, the growth rate is lower. Why? Because country A channels more of its resources to produce capital, and country B is channeling more of its resources to produce consumer goods. So a country that accumulates capital can have a higher growth. That is why for any country, if it desires to achieve higher rates of growth, it should invest more on capital. That is why country A, the growth is higher, and country B, the growth is lower. I have only answered the first question. You can try the remaining questions at home just to check whether you have understood what has been taught, right? And there are other revision activities as well. You can try them, right? Okay. So I was talking about production resources, and there are four major categories of production resources. Land always refers to natural resources, right? Even the climatic condition of a country is considered as land, right? All the natural resources, we categorize them under the label land, right? Gifts of nature. Labor means not only the physical labor, we refer to as human capital, their knowledge, their abilities, their skill levels, their education level, all these considered under the resource labor capital, right? And then, sorry, labor. And then the capital is man-made aid towards production. Vehicles, the bridges, the factories, plants and machineries, all that come under the capital. Man-made aid in production. Some, of course, wrongly think this financial capital as capital. Financial capital is means of acquiring production capital, right? Okay, so the four resources types are land, the natural resources, labor, the physical, plus knowledge, skills, abilities, education level, etc. Then the capital, man-made aid in production, and the entrepreneurship, they are the ones who take risks. They are innovators and risk takers. They are the ones who combine these resources and decide to produce goods and services to be sold at a profit. So these are the four different types of resources available in the real world: land, labor, capital, and entrepreneurship, right? Okay. Yeah. So I have explained that. Right. Now, okay. See now, I have discussed the fundamental economic problem every economy is facing. That is the scarcity of resources, right? Scarcity of resources, right? Now, all the economies in the world have to answer three basic economic problems, right? Every economy, from United States to the lowest, the poorest country in the world, will have to find answers to three basic economic problems of the world. One is they have to decide what are the types of goods we are going to produce. Are we to produce more of computers, more of machineries, more of food, more of clothing, more of medicine? So you have to decide what are the types of goods we are going to produce, in what quantities, the number, what to produce in what quantities. Then, of course, every economy will have to decide the method of producing, how to produce. Now, I have told you there are different types of production resources, right? Land, labor, capital, etc. Right? So the job of the firms is to combine these resources to produce goods. So the firms will have to decide, and the decision makers have to decide whether we are going to use labor-intensive methods of production, more labor and less capital, or capital incentive methods of production, more capital and less labor. Now see, right, how to combine these resources in producing the goods will depend on the availability of resources and the price of resources. Now, for example, where the labor is abundant and the wage rate is lower, these countries tend to use labor-intensive methods of production. Where the capital is abundant and capital is cheaper, these countries tend to use capital-intensive methods of production. I give you a classic example. It's not using like it's not like where the labor is abundant or where the capital is abundant. Now, long ago, our agriculture, especially paddy cultivation and harvesting, that had been a community affair where largely it had been labor intensive, more labor use for harvesting, for sowings, for gathering, all that, more and more labor use, labor intensive methods. But of course, as the labor became scarce, as the labor became scarce and expensive, now of course you can observe in more and more paddy cultivation, they use more and more capital, machineries. Why? Because the labor has become scarce and expensive. So, like, depending on the availability of factors of production and the price of factors of production, firms and decision makers decide whether to use capital intensive or the labor intensive method. Now, see, if you take a country like Australia where they have larger expanses of land, right? So they have the advantage of promoting agri-based industries like dairy farming, right? So based on the availability of resources and the price of resources, you decide the combination of inputs to be used, right? So how to produce, and then to whom to produce. Who are we to sell these goods? Now I have told you every country will have to find answers, right, to three basic questions. What are we to produce in what quantities, how to produce, and to whom to produce? To who are we to sell this? Now, you see, when I told to you, right, the importance of pursuing market mechanism where you use the free market behavior to channel resources, I still mention that the state intervention cannot be underestimated. The importance of state intervention cannot be ignored, overlooked. Why? Now, take the third question, to whom to produce, right? That is, once you produce goods and services, who are we to sell them? Now, if you rely on the market mechanism to find answers to the third question, to whom to sell them, market will always produce goods and services demanded by the people with higher purchasing power. Those who have lower purchasing power or those who belong to the lowest strata of the society, their needs and wants will not be catered to. Why? Because they have less purchasing power. The market will always channel resources to produce goods and services demanded by people with a higher purchasing power. That is where the state intervention is necessary, sometimes to provide some welfare assistance to those who belong to the lower strata of the society, right? So anyway, the countries will have to find answers to three basic questions. They are what to produce and in what quantities, how to produce and to whom to produce. Now, to find answers to these questions, all right, to find answers to these questions, countries use different economic systems. Again, broadly, these systems are categorized into three types. Broadly, these systems are categorized into three types, right? They are market or liberal economic system, right? Market or liberal economic system, right? On the other extreme, you have command or the planned economic system, and in between it is the mixed economic system. I will show you, right? Free market, liberal system, right? Okay. On the other extreme, you have command or the planned economic system, right? In between, you have mixed economic system, right? Free market or the liberal system. On the other extreme, you have command of the planned system. In between, you have mixed economic system, right? Okay. Now, free market or the liberal system means, right? Free market or the liberal system is, in economic terms, we call it laissez-faire system, right? Laissez-faire system. Here, what happens is, through the free interaction of demand and supply, you will learn this in detail after the introduction. We go into demand and supply. There we will learn this in detail, right? Through the free interaction of demand and supply, the price in the market is determined, right? And price will give the signals to the market how the resources should be allocated. Now, I told you at the beginning, right? The government gives priority to promote market mechanism and minimize the state intervention. So where the market mechanism is used, you allow the free interaction of demand and supply to take place, and through that the price is determined, and the price will provide signals to the market how the resources should be allocated, right? And this is exactly what the the father of economics, Adam Smith, explained as invisible hand. What is meant by invisible hand is, if you allow all the economic agents to act freely, when these, like when the markets interact this way, the price will guide the resources in an efficient manner, as if an invisible hand is guiding them, right? So through free interaction of demand and supply, price is determined. Through price, the resources are channeled in the most efficient manner. Generally, price fulfills three functions: signaling function, rationing function, and incentive function. But I will not go into detail and explain what is meant by rationing and rationing and incentive function. But once I do the demand and supply analysis, I would explain what is meant by signaling and the rationing function, right? Signaling, rationing, and the incentive functions, right? So generally, free market mechanism is this. Now, for example, let's say, right? Now, let's say during the time of COVID, right? During the time of COVID, people have started showing more and more interest in buying sanitary items, right? At the time of COVID, people started showing greater interest in purchasing sanitary items. So the demand for sanitary items has gone up. So therefore, the demand curve shifted to the right. So the demand curve shifting to the right means the price of sanitary items has gone up. So this rise in price provides signals to the market. Now it is time you shift resources from other areas to the area where these sanitary items produce, and resources should be more resources should be channeled into producing more sanitary items. So this is how the price provides signals to the market as to how the resources should be allocated, right? Okay, so in a free market system, this is exactly what happens. Now, you see, father of economics, Adam Smith, stated that, if you allow the individual economic agents to pursue their own self-interest, and if every individual pursues his or her own self-interest, overall society will benefit. Right now, I will explain that to you using an example. Right now, let's say Now, a butcher, the job of a butcher is to sell meat, right? Butcher sells meat. Why would he sell meat? Is he selling meat because he's very worried if he does not sell meat, the others would not get a chance to eat meat? No, because he's selling meat to earn a profit and make a living. So he is pursuing his own self-interest, but society as a whole would benefit. Those who buy meat, maybe for some reason they do not want to kill animals. They want the butcher to kill animals for you, right? For them, right? So therefore, when every one of us pursues his or her own self-interest, the society as a whole would benefit, right? So this free market mechanism works in that way. But there are market failures. I would not touch it now. I would explain these other two systems and then I would come to the market failures, right? Now, most cases in most countries have embraced this free market system where you rely on the free movement of demand and supply and the price mechanism to channel resources, right? But of course, I would explain that under the mixed economic system. And then other extreme, you have command of the planned economic system where the central unit may be the dictator, right? Maybe the Politburo appointed by the dictator. Maybe the Central Planning Committee appointed by the dictator. Irrespective of the demand and supply, they decide how to find answers to these questions, what to produce in what quantities, how to produce and to whom to produce, right? They do not rely on market mechanism. They do not use the free movement of demand and supply of the price mechanism to channel resources. The central unit may be the dictator, the Politburo appointed by the dictator, or the Central Planning Committee appointed by the dictator. They decide. Generally, those who believe in the free market system believe or think that the command of the planned economic system to be highly inefficient, a lot of corruption and waste. Now, former Soviet Union countries, right? Former East European countries like Poland, Hungary, Bulgaria, Yugoslavia, all these, and also former, not former, Cuba, right? All these countries followed this command of the planned economic system, right? Okay. And in between, you have the mixed economic system. You find certain aspects determined through the free market mechanism, and also you find certain degree of government involvement. The degree of government involvement varies from country to country, but generally all the countries have mixed economic system, not completely market or the completely command. Now the government involvement varies from country to country. Of course, the government involvement is necessary because the reason is under free market system there are market failures. So to correct the market failures, you need the state intervention, right? So the state intervention is needed, right? So these are the three different economic systems used the countries world over in finding answers to the major basic economic problems of what to produce, in what quantities, how to produce, and to whom to produce. Have you understood before I move into the next? Hello?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, understood.
Okay,
Yes.
all right, fantastic. Yeah, market economy. Market forces are allowed to guide the allocation of resources within a society. Prices play a key role in this system. How I have shown you how the price plays a key role in channeling resources. Government's role in a free market system is limited. I told you still the government is playing a vital role, regulatory role, like maintaining law and order, right? Providing welfare to the weaker segment of the society, correcting market failures. I would come to that later on, right? So the central planned economy, decisions on resources allocation are guided by the state. Politburo, or the dictator, the Central Planning Committee, whatever, right? Government is playing a coordination role, right? Planning and directing the allocation of resources. They're not relying on the market mechanism, right? Mixed economy where resources are allocated partly through price signals and partly on the basis of the direction by the government, right? And whatever the intervention made by the government, that would not act as a barrier in the efficient functioning of the market, right? Right? Okay, so what will be produced in a market system, it is determined based on the availability of resources and the prices of resources, right? Okay, generally through the interaction of demand and supply, through the price mechanism, the resources are allocated to produce goods and services, but you can't entirely leave it to the market. But generally, the goods where the demand is high, more resources are allocated to produce these goods, right? Okay, but of course, those with the lower, those belong to the lowest strata of the society with lower purchasing power, still the government will have to provide a kind of a blanket, kind of a assistance to ensure that they can have at least the basic requirements, right? Okay, right. Okay, there are revision questions, you can try them, right? Okay, now positive and normative economic analysis. Now remember, right? Remember, I mean, like you look at the way the economy functions, right? You look at the way the economy functions and you make your own judgments, knowingly or unknowingly, you make your own judgments by looking at the way the economy functions, right? Now, all of us know through past experiences, right? If in any case, the price of fuel goes up, like petrol and diesel, if it goes up, the cost of the prices of other goods invariably goes up. If the price of fuel goes up, the price of other items also invariably goes up. That is obvious, right? We have experienced that. Every time the price of fuel goes up, price of vegetables, price of other essential items, price of all else goes up. This is what we have experienced, right? This is what we have experienced, right? Okay, all right. And also we know that if the price of air tickets increases, right, less and less people will travel abroad, right? Okay. Now, how do we say this? How do we say this? We come to these conclusions by considering past empirical evidence. We obviously know that every time when the price of petrol, diesel goes up, the price of everything else goes up, cost of living goes up. We obviously know that if price of something goes up, people demand less and less of that. So these statements are made based on the past experiences, past empirical evidence, right? So if you make a statement based on past empirical evidence, if this happens, then this is the outcome, if and then. If this happens, then this is the outcome. If you make statements based on past empirical evidence, if this happens, then this is the outcome, we call them positive economic statements. Based on past empirical evidences, you can either agree or disagree with them by referring to the available facts and figures. Positive economic statements, if this happens, then this is the outcome. Then you have another type of analysis, we call that normative economic analysis. What is meant by normative economic analysis is, we refer to that as value judgments, value judgments. What is meant by value judgment is this, right? You express ideas based on what you believe in is right. Now let's say the government has increased the taxes. You would say the government should bring down the taxes, otherwise that would adversely affect the profitability of business. The government should at least provide some tax exemptions for growing industries. Should. What should be better? Government should facilitate the expansion of private education. What should be better? A family with five with monthly income of 150,000 rupees should be exempted from taxes. These type of statements we call normative economic statements. Value judgments, what should be better? So that is the difference between normative and positive statements, right? Positive statements are based on facts and figures, past empirical evidences. If this happens, then this is the outcome. Normative economic statements are the value judgments. What should be better, right? And what is good for you may not be good for somebody else, right? Okay, so they are value judgments. We call them normative economic analysis, because you know the functioning of the economy is not flawless, right? Right. So therefore, by looking at the way the economy functions, we make our own judgments and the statements. Some statements are based on past empirical evidence. They are the type of, if this happens, then this is the outcome. The others are value judgments. We call them normative economic analysis, right? Okay. Right. Have you understood the difference between positive and normative economic analysis?
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir.
Right.
Yes,
Yes, sir, we can move.
Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Right. So differentiate between economic goods and non-economic goods. I have explained that, right? Economic goods, you need resources, right? There is scarcity, there is price, only limited supply, not unlimited supply. Non-economic goods are the free goods. No resources needed, no opportunity cost, limitless supply, there is no price, no scarcity, fresh air, sunlight, etc. Right. Public goods and private goods, good area. Why? Because public goods come under market failure. I said market, through market mechanism, resources are allocated in the most efficient manner, but there are market failures where the government intervention is important, right? Public goods is one such example. Let's see what is meant by public goods. This comes under market failure, right? Now, public goods, there are two characteristics. One is non-excludability. Non-excludability. Other is non-rivalry. Non-excludability, non-rivalry. Non-excludability, non-rivalry. Right? Okay, I would explain what is meant by non-excludability and non-rivalry, right? First, let's look at some of these public goods. Pavements are a public good. Street lighting also is a public good. Lighthouses, public goods. These are public goods. Why you call them non-excludable and non-rival? Okay, let's understand that, right? Now let's say you pay and buy a computer. You pay and buy a computer, right? Right? So if you buy a computer, that is for you. No other person can use that. Excludable. And when you buy a computer and use it, the other person will get less opportunity, one less. So non-rival. Take an ice cream, you buy an ice cream, you eat it. Other person will have less. So rival. It is for you. Others will be excluded. But public goods are non-excludable and non-rival. I would explain, right? Now let's say in your lane, street lighting provided. In your lane, street lighting provided. When street lighting provided, right? When street lighting provided, can say that a person who is not living in your lane is walking along the lane at night. Can you say you are not living here, therefore you can't enjoy the street lighting? Can you exclude the person? Once the street lighting is provided, you can't exclude any person from benefiting from the street lighting. Non-excludable. Just because you get certain amount of lighting, other person is not going to get a lesser amount of lighting, non-rival, non-excludable and non-rival. These are the characteristics of public goods. That is why if you leave it to the market, profit-seeking private sector will not supply public goods, will they? No, they won't. Why? Because now let's say you pay and get the street lighting. Can you say others have not paid and therefore they should not be benefited from the street lighting? No. So no one is coming forward to pay and get them because of these two characteristics, non-rivalry and non-excludability. Right? So that is why it's always the government that will have to provide these public goods using the taxpayers' money. As I said, in a market, though we believe the free market system allocates resources in the most efficient manner, there are market failures. One such is the public goods, right? Private goods, excludable and rival. Therefore, the markets will supply in any number. So have you understood the difference between public goods and the private goods?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, that is where you have the free rider problem, because once provided, those who are willing or not willing to pay can benefit from it, right? Then the merit goods and the demerit goods. Two classic examples of merit goods are health and education. Health and education. Now, if you leave it to the market, right, these will not be adequately provided and consumed. These type of merit goods, if you purely leave it to the market, these will not be adequately produced and consumed. Health, education. So the government involvement is necessary. What are the demerit goods? Demerit goods are alcohol, drugs. These are demerit goods, harmful to the society. More is supplied and consumed than what is necessary, right? So you should, by now you should be able to differentiate between economic and non-economic goods or the free goods, private goods and public goods, merit goods and demerit goods, and also what is meant by free rider problem. Have you understood?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Others? Right. If you have any questions, you can raise them, right? Because this is a learning process, and if you have any doubts or questions, you raise them. And also remember, these are very interesting subject, right? Not just graphs and mathematics and concepts. These can be applied in your day-to-day business, even in supply chain management, right? There are so many theories that can be used, resource-based theories. We are not going into detail of these theories, but now since I have thrown light into this, just go to the internet and see how this subject can be used for you as supply chain managers, right? Okay. Now, what is meant by externality? This too is a market failure, right? This too is a market failure. When you say externalities, there are two types of externalities. One is negative externality, and the other is positive externalities. negative externalities and positive externalities. Right? I will give you an example. Right? Now, let's say in your area, an investor has set up a factory to produce soft toys, right? In the process of production, let's say he pollutes the environment, releases harmful gases into the air and releases toxic chemicals into the waterway. Now, what happens? The environment gets polluted. Polluted environment means those who live in the area will get sick. Sick people means on one hand, there is medical cost. On the other hand, lower work and lower productivity. What is that? Negative external cost. If you leave it to the market, this price will not include that negative external cost. Right? Negative external cost. Right? Okay, so that is why the government, now I will not go into detail today because since we have only little time, but I would take up from this and then the next week we will start the demand and supply analysis, right? But so this negative externality, of course there are negative consumption externalities and negative production externalities, remember, right? If a person in your area at night plays sound music, right, disrupting your normal day-to-day life and sleep, that is a negative externality, right? So there is external private cost in it. So generally in a free market, that external cost is not included. That is where the government intervention is needed. I will explain that next day, right? And there are not all the externalities are negative. Now, at the time of COVID, massive vaccination program conducted. Vaccination comes under positive externality because once you get vaccinated, right, you prevent the disease from spreading and you also don't contract, so there'll be positive externalities. Where there are positive externalities, there is external benefit. An external benefit is not included in the price determined in the free market. Again, the government intervention is needed. That is a positive externality. Negative externality, pollution, right? Sound, music, right? Positive externalities are vaccination, education, electric vehicles, right? Decorations like, at the Vesak period, Christmas period, you see decorations. These are positive externalities, right? Right? Smoking, negative externality. So always there is an external cost or a benefit, right? And if that is not included in the market mechanism, in the price, then of course the government has to intervene and correct the market failure. Right? Of course, that can be explained graphically using marginal social cost and marginal social benefit. But I think this is not the time to drag it out because now the time is almost right, and I have been talking to you for 3 hours with various concepts, graphs, theories, etc. I do not want to overload with all these things. First thing is, have you gained something out of the session and have you enjoyed the session? That is number one. Have you or have you not?
Yes, indeed, we have learned.
Yes, sir.
You gained something out of that? Huh? Learned something out of that?
Yes, indeed,
Yes,
sir.
sir.
Right. And do you have any questions up to now, whatever we have discussed? If you have, please raise them. And I want you to read these. Not only that, go to the internet, search and learn what is Gini coefficient, why it is there, right? What is meant by market failures, what are the externalities, how they work, right? What are the positive and negative economic statements? You can go to the internet and learn. At MBA level, right, you should have the real practical knowledge. That means ability to apply what you learn in the class in the decision-making process. That is what you got to learn at the MBA level. That is what we are trying so hard to instill in you, right? So overall, to achieve that objective, number one thing is you got to really improve your discipline, participating in the lectures from the beginning to the end, and also revising them, reading additional material. I would try to sort of collect interesting articles, materials, etc., and open up a folder and upload it in your portal so that you can read and enjoy that. Right. Even the assignment I will give you, that is for you to go out, gather information and learn something out of that. I have not decided the assignment yet, but within a week or so, I will finalize the assignment and send it to you. And ensure that you participate in these lectures. It's different when you watch the recordings and when you participate in the real lecture. When you participate in the real lecture and then afterwards when you watch the recording, that would benefit. But if you don't participate in the lecture and straight away go into the recording, that will not really help you, because you may not grasp the material in a proper way. So ensure that you participate in this, because your hope is to get an MBA. Certificate is one thing, but you got to gain the knowledge to reflect that standard. So that, of course, can be gained only through sheer hard work, right? We are there to assist you. Whatever the assistance you need, of course, you can reach us, right? So I would not go beyond this. So finally, I have explained to you the three different market systems and how these market systems work. Though the free market system or the liberal system allocates resources the most efficient manner, why there are market failures. One such example is public goods, right? The characteristics are non-excludability and non-rivalry. The other is the externalities, the positive and negative externalities. There is another market failure where, certain firms acquire high market power and thereby the ability to charge very high prices way above the marginal cost. We will discuss these at the next lecture, and of course next week we will start the new part, that is demand and supply analysis, that comes under microeconomics. So if you don't have any questions, we can wind up for today. If you have questions, please do raise them. Do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Right. Hope that you have gained something out of that and you have enjoyed the session. And thank you very much for participating in and remaining in this from the beginning to the end. 24 to 25, of course, participated continuously from the beginning to the end. So I appreciate your participation and keep the spirits up. And let's meet on next Thursday. Thank you very much and good evening.
Good evening,
Thank you
sir.
so much.
Thank you.
Good
Thank you,
evening.
sir.
Thank you. Thank you. Hoppa.